Hey, what's up? I was just doing a video and then somehow my cat turned it off, I guess. Um, but anyway, I'm just been watching things about King Arthur, like the King Arthur tales. I'm watching on Netflix like the series called BBC series called Merlin, and then there was a Netflix series I think called Cursed, which I guess they canceled it after one season, but that was decent. That was like the girl from I don't know, it's a girl from some kind of uh, mainstream American show or shows, but she's like the Nimue witch person or something, but she's like the good guy in that one. And then I watched Arthur, which is like the Guy Ritchie film about the King Arthur tales. And so, like my interest was piqued in it partly because, like, first I had watched like The Mists of Avalon like last year because Avalon is a name for the underworld for America. And since I've been studying the ancient, traditions regarding America, regarding infernology, the underworld. Uh, that was interesting to me. Because, like, in the Mists of Avalon, it's very, they make it clear that Avalon was the center of the ancient pre Christian religion, which I think is accurate. Before Christianity, for, at least, probably 5,000 years and maybe much longer. Uh, Everybody in the world basically worshipped America, and the people in America worshipped Afro Eurasia. People worshipped the underworld. And so, like, these other ones that I'm watching also have a lot of that. Like in Cursed, it's the one that was only, they did one season and canceled it because of COVID. But they're always, instead of Avalon, they're always referring to the hidden, but they also refer to the Isle of the Blessed, which they also refer to a lot in Merlin. So these are all the same thing. It's America, um, and but like another thing that piqued my interest in it is I was listening to uh, a YouTube, you know, audio version of the book Hamlet's Mill. And it's about how, like, a lot of ancient, basically ancient mythology and like paganism, religion was a technical language that was used to describe science and particularly astronomy. And so people debate that. Apparently it's like out of favor in academia, this theory, but it's clearly true. I mean, Hamlet's Mill shows it to be true. And they show that King Arthur's tales are part of that. They're astronomical, and that a lot of the elements in the King Arthur story are found, are found in similar stories throughout the world, which is to say it's not a real story. It's either not a real guy, or they took the name of a real guy and they put it on something that was something ancient, symbolic and cosmological. So like I forget all the details. Like I know it also relates to Hamlet because Hamlet's part of that same constellation of symbolic memes basically. And like Hamlet is not a real story about a real person. It's a symbolic story about planets and stars and stuff. And I mean, it's hard to know exactly like what it's I mean, it's hard to know what each part is about, but it seems clear that altogether it's cosmological and astronomical. And like Arthur, for instance, I mean, I'm leaning towards that King Arthur is Thor or is Jupiter, the planet, and that Merlin is Mercury. Um, because, they have the characteristics, the story has the characteristics of being um cosmological, symbolical. Well, I think I have like mole on my face. Um, but so it has the characteristics of being symbolic, and so once you realize that it's symbolic, and once you know that like almost throughout the world all the symbolic like mythological motifs were connected to each other, like you can find the same symbolism, cosmological symbolism in Mexico, in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, in South America. um, so once you realize that it's that into that realm, you can just try to look to see which motifs does it fit, which memes does it fit. And Arthur, the fact that um I mean, even maybe that his name might be from Thor, because even though King Arthur is supposed to be British, Welsh, um the story was not written in Welsh to my knowledge, or for the most part I think it was written in like Latin or something. um I think it was written in a lot of different languages, but there's no reason to assume, like for instance, the name they use for America for the underworld is Avalon. That's not a Welsh name. Like there's no record of anybody ever using that word in Welsh. So we don't really know where that word came from, um, other than that it was related to apples, the word apple. Um, so, it's not, it can't just be treated as some traditional Welsh thing. Like in fact that there's not really evidence. I'm not sure if there's evidence that it is Welsh in origin. It could have been created by somebody else. It could have been created by Anglo-Saxons or by some continental people. Um, but he has the characteristics of Thor in the sense of that he picks up a sword that only he can wield. Nobody else can wield it. Um, and that's the same as like Thor's hammer, which only Thor can lift. Uh, and basically, which basically gives the impression that he's the strongest person, and Thor is of course the strongest, you know, in the Norse pantheon. And and the idea of him being the king, Thor, Jupiter is often treated as the king of the gods. Like in the Greek pantheon, he's called Zeus. So he's so much as he thought of as the king of the gods or the god of the gods, that it seems like the etymology of even the word God in Greek and maybe in Latin from that is like Deus, which is basically from Zeus. It's like his name became the name of, seemingly, unless there's some kind of dual etymology, but basically his name is the name of for gods. Um, and like in Mesopotamia, he was Enlil and Marduk and Baal among the in the Levant among the Phoenicians. So like Jupiter is like considered to be the top god in all kinds of different pantheons. And and then Merlin seems to probably be Mercury, because Mercury is always considered to be the intelligent god. Like in Egypt, Thoth is the god of wisdom. In you know, Greece, Hermes is the god of wisdom. Um, and of course, in the Norse tradition, Odin is the god of wisdom, and he's also Mercury. So chances are, chances are that's what it is. Also, the fact that Arthur is always called the once and future king um, suggests that, at least whenever that is stated, suggests that he's not the king, but he used to be the king and he will someday be the king. Um, and that seems to be, that fits with the fact that Jupiter seems to fluctuate in its position, at least in different pantheons, because, like in the Greek pantheon, Zeus is the king of the gods, but in the Egyptian pantheon, uh, he seems to be Seth, who's basically the king of the devils, or of the, you know, like to the extent that the gods are divvied into good and bad. Seth is often, put with the bad and even placed as the leader of the bad. So this all may just be due to, or probably is just largely due to the positions of these planets in the sky. So at a certain point in time, um, Jupiter would be considered the king of the gods. And at another time, based on his flight patterns, basically, he would be considered the king of the devils. And like it seems like the way it's divided up, like there's certain planets and stars that are associated with the world, and then there's certain ones that are associated with the underworld. So I don't know if it's exactly half and half, but and I'm not exactly sure what criteria is used to determine, which is which. It may be that the ones that are associated with the underworld are retrograde, or somehow are seen as, either they're invisible below the horizon, or they're retrograde, or something of that nature. Um, so, if at one point Jupiter had a certain position in the sky, and as Zeus was like the king of the gods, and then lost that position and became like, the kind of what Seth is, like the king of the devils, but is also known to eventually cycle back around to become the king of the gods again, then that would make perfect sense to call him the once and future king. Um, like in the Jewish religion, it seems that Yahweh may be Saturn, since it's on Saturday that is their holy day. Um, and so, for them, you could say that Jupiter is not their chief god, but maybe that's due to the position in the sky, and maybe eventually it would be Jupiter again. And so, again, that could fit with the once and future king concept. Um, but, and like there's the Lady of the Lake in the Arthur Tales who plays a prominent role. And like the Lady of the Lake probably either is the lake itself, and the lake itself is probably the ocean, or the Lady of the Lake may be Avalon itself, which is America. Um, but this is often obfuscated by like treating it as a literal lake, like a, relatively small lake, and treating Avalon as just some little island in it that might be like nearby Britain or in Britain or something. And then the same with the Isle of the Blessed. They often try to just treat it as some little nearby island, but it's really the underworld, it's America. Um, there's another uh, like example of the cosmological symbolism is how King Arthur, I think there's some love interest, at least in one of the renderings. There's some like romantic involvement between Arthur and Morgana, and or Morgan Le Fay or whatever, and who's either his sister or his half sister or his sister-in-law, or I don't know, something like that. But that's like that's one of the elements that's in all these different stories, like it's in Hamlet, and all these Finnish and Persian and different stories. uh it involves some kind of like incestuous brother sister kind of entanglement, and it seems like all the elements in the story are cosmological and probably mostly celestial. So it's probably referring to different constellations that either, you know, Jupiter or maybe the sun or something is passing through. And I think that's also the same as a lot of the ancient initiation rites, and also like the Masonic initiation rites, where there's all these kind of very weird steps where they would, symbolically go to the underworld. Um, in the Masonic hall, they would like go down the stairs. They would have their eyes blindfolded, and there's all these different weird steps, and I think it has to do with the passageway past all the different constellations and stuff like that. Um, like the blinding in that instance seems to overlap with the 5,000-year-old Inanna story of Inanna in the underworld, where um, Inanna's messenger sends her messenger from the underworld, and he has to uh, lacerate his eyes, and then he has to lacerate his nose. So anyway, I think that relates to the same tradition, and where the Freemasons would blindfold their eyes as they were going to the underworld. And there's ancient art, like funerary art in Egypt and Mexico, showing, figures basically lacerating their own eyes. So I'm sure that's the same origin. And there's um also like in the Anana version, like when she's going to the underworld, she has to remove her gold ring and like all her jewelry and stuff like that. And for the Masonic initiation and a lot of ancient initiations, they had the same elements where they would have to put a blindfold and then take off all their gold and like jewels and stuff to go down the stairway to symbolically enter the underworld and be reborn as a, initiated, you know, uh, Freemason or priest or whatever it was. Um, so yeah, let's see what else. Seems like my phone now like cuts me off. It used to let me go. It originally let me go 40 minutes and would cut me off, and then I think I got too much crap on my phone, and then so it didn't have the memory anymore, so then it would cut me off after 30 minutes. But now I think it's cutting me off after like just 20, 22 minutes, or I'm not really sure what, maybe 24 minutes. So, maybe that's for the best because people don't have that much time anyway. But anyway, yeah, like the King Arthur tales, it seems that the round table itself is the planet, and it's all cosmological, like probably all the knights of the round table are all probably different planets or something. Um, like if it was in relating to the Egyptian pantheon, Lancelot kind of seems similar to Horus, um, at least whichever Horus it is that like spears Apep in the passage to the underworld and back. Um, but yeah, like it's kind of becomes obvious that it's mythology when you see like all the elements in the King Arthur story, especially in the original. Like they had a recent one film called I guess The Green Knight, which I saw in theaters, and it was based on King Arthur. And like that one is so clear that it's mythology because none of it makes sense if taken literally. That's people think like the ancients were all on drugs, but no, it's like they made all these stories weird so that people would get a clue and realize it's not to be taken literally. um, but of course, since we don't know how to read the symbolic language, it becomes, it's quite difficult. But I think it can be cracked, and I'm at least leaning towards Arthur being um, Jupiter, um, Merlin being Mercury, and even in the names you could say Merlin, Mercury, because this was written, as far as we know, we don't have any evidence to show that this was all in its original form prior to contact with the Romans and the Germanic people. So we can't fully disprove at least that Arthur, that the Thur might relate to Thor, and that the Mer in Merlin might relate to Mercury, even though those are two different languages, but those are two different languages that had the most contact with Britain at that time. Um, so, like, yeah, Mercury being the intelligent, wise planet, Thor being Jupiter being the strong one, that the only one that can lift the you know the hammer, or maybe in this case the sword, Excalibur. um, and the idea of being the king of kings, but then being the once and future king. And it could be that Uther, who's like the king before who's, before Arthur, either relates to Thor as well, or maybe could be Saturn, maybe Saturn, the way that in Judaism, if Yahweh is indeed Saturn, maybe it's like Saturn is in power after after Jupiter is cast down, and then but Jupiter is destined to return, so it's the once and future king. Um, you know, I don't know. I just would encourage anybody who wants to know like the truth about human history to check out Hamlet's Mill, because it really it I mean it just explains, it shows how clearly like so many of the ancient stories are symbolism and are the same stories, just retold with different names in different places, etc. And so it doesn't, it offers some theories as to the actual identities of each particular god, etc., some of which seem to be wrong and some of which seem to be correct. Um, but I still have more to learn from that book. I still have to study that book more before I can even say that I've taken away everything, even a fraction of what I can from it. Anyway, so, but it's unfortunate that people don't know that, so they see it as literal. So when they see all this fucked up shit where like all these, people are always killing each other and raping each other, and there's always like incest and just all these like cannibalism, all these things, that's is dangerous. It's dangerous when people don't understand that religion isn't literal. Like by nature, religion is not literally true. Otherwise, it wouldn't be called religion. It would just be called like philosophy or something. Religion is a symbolic way to say something true by using untruths. Um, so, when people take it literally and they think, oh my God, Arthur really, my hero Arthur really killed all these people and he really was like incestuous and he's really, like that would be some fucked up role models. But that's how it is because that's what people think. People think, oh, Arthur was a dude. These are all these things he did. Um, Same with Hamlet. Same with a lot of this. They think these are either were real people or at least fictional people meant to seem like real people. But what they don't understand is like, no, these are like celestial bodies. These are cosmology, and it's weird because it's not literal. The weirdness is supposed to clue you in. It's same like with the Bible when people take it literally and they think like, oh, it says that, we're all cursed because of women ate a fruit or something. No, like the, you know, none of that is literal. And I don't even think like whoever wrote that or came up with that meant it to be taken as literal, except maybe by children. But for adults, who are educated, they understand what religion is. Religion is a series of stories, fables, allegories, which are not literally true, but if understood, they can reveal actual truth. So the actual truth is not like, oh no, women doomed us because they ate a fruit. It's just like, it's hard to know exactly what the truth is about that story. It's something about how, you know, people people developed knowledge and then they became agricultural. That's the only thing you can say fully historically that it references. But then because it's religion, because it's mythology, it always has to say, and therefore that's why the sky is blue or something like that. But if you're an educated person, you understand how it works, that's not a literal thing. That's just something that's what you do in religion. And again, maybe for the children, maybe it was something that maybe little kids would take it literally, And then as soon as you get old enough to learn things, then your parents tell you, oh yeah, by the way, this none of this is literal. It's all like a symbolic language, and this is what that language means. But in our society, we have people that go from cradle to grave believing that all this stuff is literal. So was I don't think it was ever intended to um, be viewed that way. Anyway, um, take care, everybody. Thanks for sticking it out. I'm glad my phone let me go longer this time. I guess because I restarted it. I think that gave it more juice or something. Um, but yeah, I ordered more books. I got some like black and white ones that I'm gonna see if they come out at all decent. Like if you can still basically tell what's in the pictures, then I'm gonna order a fuck ton of the black and white ones and just be like giving them out everywhere because they're like $7 a piece. So, it's not too cheap, but it's pretty cheap at least compared.